about the origin of the cemetery.
There you go.
It's what you call a homestead. The city had this plot of land and told the citizens, we're going to put a cemetery here. If you'd like a plot, then come and get one and stake it out. So the families did that. So you'll see fences, you'll see little walls, you'll see slabs, whatever they wanted to do to preserve their family plot here. So each individual plot is owned. The city owns the land that's not claimed by somebody.
Okay.
So it's maintained, sketched by the city. They cut the grass and do that, but all the tombs are the responsibilities and grave sites of the people that own them. And it's full at this time. So unless someone gives up, and there's some that we don't know the origin of the families even, but we know they're claimed.
Yes.
And some people haven't used them in 100 years, perhaps. So that's the origin, because we've had people say, well, why isn't it, it's beautiful, but why isn't it better maintained, and some of this or that? Well, there is no perpetual care. It's whatever you want to do with your family plot here. So that's a little backstory to the cemetery.
And then the other cemetery, St. Mary's, right,
Yes.
is totally different. As
Yes.
far as that's the one next to St. Rose de Lima, the Catholic Church, and it's not run the same way.
No,
No.
it's maintained by the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So that's a difference. So this is public.
Yes, the fact that it's homesteaded, it explains why there are no, or very few rows. You know, there's no real definition of any organization. Yes, and
What a
as you
good
get
word,
farther
yeah.
back, you'll see it's even less organized. And the other unusual thing is that when people claimed an area, there was no records kept. So nowhere in City Hall or any records does it say this family is located here and this family owns this one. I mean, they do own it, but there's no records anywhere. So it's kind of a difficult thing, but the Historical Society did go through back in the early 90s, late 80s, and recorded every grave that was recordable. So we do have those records. If you have family buried here, you can come and look up and see what we have about them. For $5, about Hancock ghosts, Hancock hauntings and coast ghosts. Just fun little stories. There's some truth to most of them.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Hancock County Historical Society's 30th annual cemetery tour. I'm Catherine Lebrano. My friends call me Kate. I was born right here in the Bay on January the 3rd, 1871. My parents were Rebecca Douglas of Charleston, South Carolina. My father was George Maynard of St. Louis, Missouri. He was a Confederate War veteran, and at the time of my birth, he was the town marshal here. I met and married Frank J. Lebrano of Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana. Frank and I met while he was here in the Bay buying lumber to build homes for his workers in Louisiana. Frank also had a Louisiana residency, so we had a house in Pointe-a-la-Hache, Louisiana as well. Frank was very successful in Plaquemines. He was elected Justice of the Peace, Postmaster, and Clerk of Court. He was also the founder and developer of a process of taking empty oyster shells and putting them at the bay, bottom of the bay in Plaquemines, to cultivate oysters. That business, he was very successful. Until 1915, the government came in and started cutting openings into the mouth of the Mississippi, and that freshwater infusion killed the oyster beds. Needless to say, the business failed. We had to sell our property here, and it was just all we had to do. So instead of selling the entire plot, we sold off the large house that faced Main Street, and there was another area that had a small house on it. So I lived there, and my mother lived there with me as well. In 1917, I developed skin cancer, and my mother was ill also. So by that time, we just lived in the small house until we died. And other family members lived there over the years, but it was vacant for many, many years until my grandchildren decided to give it to the Historical Society to use for their headquarters. And so that's where the Kate Lebrano house is today.
I am Jacinto Lebrano. I'm not buried here at Cedar Rest, but I was invited, a special invitation. I was born in Naples, Italy in 1783. I was at Elba when Napoleon surrendered. Due to political unrest, me and my father left Italy and became sailors, where we made the voyage from Gibraltar to Havana several times. In 1809 in New Orleans, I met Jean Lafitte and fell in with his band of men. I quickly became one of his favorite officers, and me, him, and General Andrew Jackson defeated the British at the Battle of New Orleans. In 1815, General Jackson awarded me one of his swords in appreciation of my service. Years later, during the Civil War, I heard that a Union general, Benjamin Butler, said he was going to seize my sword, to which I replied, I'll be happy to cut his head off with it. I lived a full life. I died November 12th, 1880, in New Orleans. I was 97 years old, the last of Lafitte's Buccaneers. I still had all my teeth, hair, and eyesight when I went. My grandson, Francis, Jacinto, named after me, was born in 1870 in Point La Hache, Louisiana. His wife, Kate, just told you about his successful oyster seeding business. Little Frank was about 10 when I died. I got to know him though, he was a good kid. In the Daily Picayune, my obit read in part, here lies a man who gazed upon the great Napoleon, who sailed with Lafitte in the Gulf of Mexico, and who defeated the British at Chalmette, being awarded a sword from the hands of the hero of that battle. The span of this aged veteran's life connects the present with a distant past, a past so distant that it reaches back into another century.
This ghost right here is, I don't know what happened to her, but she decided that she was going to go haunt somebody else tonight for Halloween.
Who was that supposed to be?
Back there?
Yeah.
That is the Native American, the oldest grave in the cemetery, 1820.
Okay.
And for a long time, we thought it was a woman because it says died in the bloom of youth.
Okay.
And so we just assumed it was a woman. But a couple of years ago, some descendants came into the society and said, oh, no, it's a man. And the last name is Robertson. So one of the thoughts is that she is a descendant of one of the original explorers.
Okay.
He was a descendant of one of the original explorers, since Robertson is...
Well, he would have been like, for instance, an Anglo or a French or
Correct.
some European had a baby with the Indian
with the
lady.
Native American.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Good evening. I am Ginger Bird Parody, the Gypsy Queen. I was born September 27, 1924 in Fort Worth, Texas, and later married Tony Parody of Route 1, Bay St. Louis. Little is known about my life, but my death is another matter. In 1967, at age 43, I was hospitalized in the Bay and died 3 days later. Because I was a Gypsy Queen, a large, elaborate funeral was held at my burial site, but no one knows where the burial site is. According to Gypsy custom, there are no identifying marks of my burial site, preventing my body from being taken out of its resting spot. I was buried in a Wilbert vault. For those of you who don't know, a most expensive vault, fit for a queen, reconstructed with bronze interior to prevent corrosion. Also, we had a huge celebration. Gypsies and non-gypsies alike attended my service, but pictures were not allowed, as we gypsies believe pictures steal one's soul. A big celebration, somewhat like a wake, was held with many friends and family attending, enjoying food, drink, and dancing. See you on the other side.
My name is Billy Boy Dillon, and I was a mean, badass dude. Actually, I was a criminal, and I came from New York City, where a lot of criminals live, even today, and I came over here because I was getting into trouble, and the heat was on. So I came to a little town on the Gulf Coast called Pascagoula. And this is about the year 1942. Well, I suffered from an obsession, a perversion. And that perversion was I liked to sneak into the house of little girls. And in those days, there was no air conditioning. So the windows were open, but they had a screen over the window. But the Phantom Barber of Pascagoula had a scissors. So I would cut the screen, creep into the house, find the little girl, cut a lock of her hair off without waking her, and creep out. Well, you can imagine that first victim. She woke up in the morning and looked in the mirror and was panicked. And then she saw the screen and figured out how I got in. She didn't know who I was, of course. Well, this got the neighborhood all upset, but everybody said, well, a solitary event, no big deal. She didn't get hurt. About 3 weeks later, a second little girl in the same neighborhood had a visit by the Phantom Barber of Pascagoula, and I acquired another lock of hair for my collection. So this went on. Now, by this time, the neighborhood's going crazy. The newspapers are asking the police, why aren't you doing something? So they started having more night patrols. Now, this is World War II, and you're supposed to have all the lights out. After my third victim, they said, turn the lights on in the neighborhood, all the street lights. Over a 6-month period, I was able to successfully get 5 locks of hair. The word had gotten out all over the country about this fiendish guy, that's me, the Phantom Barber of Pascagoula. Well, I stopped then. But unfortunately, I got convicted and went to jail for beating a man named Heisman with a lead pipe to death, and stayed in the jail for a long time. And then about 1953, I was released. And I came home here to Bay St. Louis, where I had family and friends, not many, but my barbering days were over. But one day I disappeared, and nobody knew where I went or what I did. But the family and the friends said, he's badass dude. Surely he's gotten himself into some kind of trouble or mixed with the wrong kind of people. So a few days later, I was floating down the river, chained to a wood piling, dead. I was bloated and discolored more than I am tonight. And the family and friends, the sheriff brought the body in because I was a missing person, and they said, that's him, that's him. So they buried me in a grave nearby, and that was it for Billy Boy Dolan. Except a week later, the FBI sent the sheriff a letter saying the fingerprints of that corpse you sent us was not William Dolan, the supposed Phantom Barber of Pascagoula. Where is he? We don't know. We don't know who I am. But if you would like to hear more of my story and visit with me further, tonight at midnight, when it's dark, come on down and I'll tell you what you want to hear. And if you want, I'll give you a little haircut.
Welcome, friends. My name is Juro Radulovic. That's a Slavic name. Does anyone know where the Balkans are? Okay, some people, good. Most people don't because they don't teach well in history in school anymore. Okay, well, the southern part of the Balkans is where Montenegro is. It's right on the Adriatic Sea. And I was born in a place called Novi. And that's this word right here. You pronounce the B like a V in the Slavic language, okay? And it was on the Bay of Kotor. And you pronounce that P like an R. So why he wrote this on his gravestone, he had ordered this gravestone special and send it over. But why he wrote it here was because he was a seaman. And he didn't want to just have the information about his life. He wanted people to be able to tell where he was from and who he was. So he says, Bay of Kotor, Novi. And if you're a touristy person, you can go to Novi. Now it's a tourist attraction, just like Bay St. Louis is. And that's one reason why a lot of people came from that area, southern part of the Balkans, Montenegro area, what is Montenegro today, over to this area, because it's very similar. Here we have the coast, the bay, over there the coast, the bay, the Adriatic, and so you felt very much at home in the same way as in the Mediterranean as you do here. Another reason why he came over here was they had a lot of fighting in this area. It's never ever peaceful in the Balkans. First of all, you had Napoleon. You know who Napoleon Bonaparte is, right? Napoleon came in and he conquered that area. Well, even before them, you had the Muslims come up from the south and they settled in the southern part where Montenegro is today. Then you had, after Napoleon, you had the Austrian-Hungarian Empire take over that area, and they persecuted people that had means, people that had property. They took away from them. They taxed them very heavily. And so I, being a person who was a ship owner and shipbuilder, I moved over here so I could have a free life. Then you'll hear about the fellow called Tito. Anybody know him? Okay. Well, you must have been a history major.
Degree in it.
Okay. Well, then you know. Tito and the Yugoslavia, the Russians, well, the Soviets, they say, they installed him as sort of a puppet dictator over Yugoslavia, which means Greater Slavs. Okay? When their system broke down, the Soviet system broke down, then you had the Serbians and Bosnians owning this area. And they were always fighting. And then they had their big war. And finally, in 2006, Montenegro became its own little country again, in the very beginning. I told you the Muslims were in the southern part. From the north, you had influence from the Roman Catholics because that was the religion of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. But I was a Greek Orthodox, which was influenced from the Greece, and here you can see the cross, which indicates my faith, Greek Orthodox. With this, interestingly, this gravestone holds more information than any other you'll find anywhere. Look at this blank wall, blank wall, blank wall. It tells you everything about him because he was being a navigator. He wanted everybody to know where they could find his home. It has his mother's name and his father's name here. Here's his mother's name. And you pronounce that C like an S, Simonon. And this would be his father's name. But the notes I have shortened his father's name into Simon. But it would really be quite a bit longer, which I won't even try to pronounce for you. Okay. This says, "Here lie the bones of Juro Radulović." That's what this says here. Okay, and as you can tell from the dates here, I didn't live very long. Here is my birth date, the 22nd of March, 1810. Here is the death, the 20th of March, 2 days before my 40th birthday. Didn't live very long. But hopefully I brought enough to this area to make a big influence and it give good time for you a little bit. You have any questions that I can't answer?
Were your relatives the Kovaceviches?
Now, everybody in Montenegro is related, they say. So probably. Now, if you go to the Biloxi Museum Seaport, you'll find a ship there called the Mary Margaret. It was actually built by people who came from that area over here, just like I did. We were shipbuilders, we were sailors, and we loved the ocean. That's why we were here. Any other questions? That was a good question.
Well, we had a boat
Oh.
by them. Yeah.
Well, excellent. Was it a good boat?
It was a great boat.
Well, we pride ourselves on being the best boat builders in the world.
Yes.
And you must have taught other people, I'm sure, when you were alive, even though it was a short life.
Well, my father, while he was alive, when Napoleon came in, he was considered to be one of the teachers of that area. He was considered to be one person that they would look up to find things out, because he was a very knowledgeable man, as well as owning property, as well as owning ships.
Oh, I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago and it went right to my head. When I have moonshine, I like to sing, and I think I'm funny, and I like to hold hands with a young lady and tell her things like, "Here's to the girl that steals a kiss and runs to tell her mother. She's a foolish, foolish girl, for she shan't get another." My name is David Posey. Now it's 1917, and I came down with my family from Brookhaven, Mississippi. And they hired me at the Ingham Day Lumber Company to build one of their railroads to go into the forest to get their trees out. And when I'm not on the booze, I'm a pretty straight arrow fellow. Belong to the Masons, got a good family, got a saint for a wife. But then things happened. It was a balmy Sunday day. I was out in my car and I was checking out some of the roads that I had built, because now I was the road commissioner for all of Hancock County. We're up in the northern part of the county, and I got two of my black men with me, and we're kind of singing a little bit and having a good time. And coming down the road, we see another group of people just like you, and we pull over and we join them in conversation, and it's getting louder and louder. We're having a good time, and then Deputy Sheriff Oscar Farr pulls up in his vehicle, and he goes, "David Posey, you're making way too much noise and you're disturbing the peace." And the two black men that were with me, they were smart. They got respectful real quick. Not me. I looked at Sheriff Oscar Farr right in the eye and I said, "I built these damn roads and I'll do anything I want on these roads." And you know what he did? He pulled out his gun and shot me dead right there on the spot. My body got left on the side of the road. It wasn't found till the next morning. Now they were kind enough to bury me over here. And then a few months later, there's an inquisition or a little trial, and I want to tell you how the good old boy system works. The prosecutor was named Gex, G-E-X. The defending lawyer was named Gex, G-E-X. they were brothers. The judge, his name was Ainsley. And down here in the county, there's a big section of land that's called Ainsley. And I was from Brookhaven, Mississippi. They found Oscar Farr innocent. Self-defense. I guess I was saying deadly words to him. But it kind of made things a little difficult for my wife and family. They had to move away because of all of that. And, you know, my wife, she was a saint. She was a saint. And when I'd have a little moonshine, you know what I would say to her?
What?
Here's to the girl that steals a kiss and stays to get another. She's a foolish, foolish girl, and soon she'll be a mother. I had 6 children. 6 children. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I am glad to have you here. I hope you all join us for hot dogs over there later on. You got one more man with a little bit of class.
I'm Charles Gray, former executive director of the Historical Society. And I've got my notes with me here because a couple of years ago, when I died, my mind started fading. You know, my suit held up pretty well, but my mind isn't what it used to be. But anyway, I'm Charles Gray, and I was born in Waynesboro, Mississippi. And after graduation from high school, Waynesboro High School in 1934, I went to the University of Southern Mississippi. And after that, I enlisted in the Army. And I served in Germany for 2 years, from 1956 to 1958. And during that time, it was mostly, my service was in Europe. So I got to travel the continent, which I really enjoyed doing, as I'll share with you later about the number of countries that I've toured. I went to New Orleans for a New Year's Eve party 43 years ago. And the party continued on, so I never left New Orleans until 1984, when I settled here in Bay St. Louis. While in New Orleans, I met my life partner, James Clocher, who was married to, as is my dog Maxwell. And we operated Corinne Dunbar's restaurant in New Orleans, a longtime favorite restaurant. We had locals certainly enjoyed it, and we served such luminaries as Ernest Hemingway and Walt Disney, just to name a couple of them. Waiting to, I was sailing from New Orleans to Key West when I saw a home here on the coast, just at the bottom of the bluff here, Beechwood Manor. And I really thought it was a beautiful home, so my partner and I bought the home. And then I wanted to research, so I went to the Hancock County Historical Society and learned about not only Beechwood Manor, but I learned about the Historical Society. And it intrigued me. So I was immediately made a vice president and continued on with the Historical Society until my death. My first act in the Historical Society was to have the battle that took place in the War of 1812. Before the British could get to New Orleans, they made a stop here in order to decide whether they were to go by land or sea to invade New Orleans. So there was a battle here in St. Louis Bay in December of 1814. So we wanted that battle, if you would, to be named the Battle of St. Louis Bay. So we petitioned the state of Mississippi, and they agreed that that would be the official name. And we had a monument resurrected at the foot of Ullman Avenue, the historical marker. And on that day the naming was done, we actually fired a cannon as what had happened during the War of the battle took place in December of 1814. The following 40 plus years, I served in the active capacity in the society, becoming the executive director. It is said that my contributions to the preservation of Hancock County history were profound, if I can say that myself. I worked to increase the membership, currently over 300 members nationwide. I was a key player in acquiring the Hancock County Historical Society headquarters, which is the Kate LeBrana House. And you met Kate earlier. Well, she's kind enough to reside here and let us use the house, which we greatly appreciate. We digitized many of our documents now, which was a significant movement. We organized host events such as the cemetery tour, which has been going on now for 30 years. I was an in-demand public speaker and could talk endlessly about the history of Hancock County and the French engagement and colonialization of the Mississippi Gulf Coast. As I said, I'm buried here with my dog Maxwell, and there's also a lady interred here who is interred with her cat. And the cat is out and about at night, and Maxwell hears that, so Maxwell's out and about at night. So it's very disturbing to a lot of our residences to hear that commotion that goes on there at night. As I mentioned, I traveled extensively, visited over almost 160 countries during my travels, which I enjoyed thoroughly. I passed away on Friday, April the 29th, 2022. My obituary says I was witty, charming, and legendary with my ability to spin a yarn. And I agree, I am. So we want to thank you very much for attending this tour of the Cedar Rest, and we hope you'll come visit with us another time. And please stop by the Historical Society where we have hot dogs and drinks for you over there as complimentary of the society. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.